Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going on a deep dive,
Mm.
into perfectionism.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we've got this really cool blog post to guide us. It's called Impresiones de Perfeccionista, Longe de Ser Perfecto, Pensamentos Marcorelianos.
Okay.
Yeah. And, what's really interesting to me is like how AI is kind of like changing how we think about perfectionism.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting intersection. I mean, this human thing about wanting to make perfect work, right,
Right.
has been around forever. Like, how is that going to be changed by AI?
Exactly. So the blog post talks about how like this urge to be perfect, it's just like it's a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you think technology, especially AI, is playing into that? Is it making it worse or is it something totally different?
I think it's probably doing both, you know?
Yeah.
Like throughout history, you can see this desire for perfection popping up, in all these different ways.
Hmm.
Think about Da Vinci. He was always revising his work like crazy, always trying to make it absolutely perfect, like the perfect form, the perfect lighting, all of it in his art.
Totally. And what about Michelangelo? Spending all those years literally on his back making the Sistine Chapel ceiling perfect.
Exactly. And their dedication's amazing, but you can also see how that level of detail could be a little bit much, don't you think?
Yeah, a little overwhelming for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where AI comes in, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have these really powerful tools that can like really help us refine and polish our work,
Right.
maybe even better than we could do ourselves.
Oh, wow.
Imagine having a program that could like look at your writing and say, hey, you could make this better, not just like grammar, but for style, for how it flows.
Hmm.
It's almost like having a personal editor like right there whenever you need it.
That's pretty tempting. But would that kind of make us lazy in the long run? Would it mess with our own creativity and critical thinking?
Yeah.
It's like using a calculator all the time for math. You get the answer, but do you really understand how you got there?
That's the dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like that Kafka-esque dilemma that the blog post talks about, this feeling of being trapped,
Yeah.
always revising, refining, never feeling like the work is quite good enough.
So can you explain what this Kafka-esque dilemma is and how does it relate to like what we're talking about here?
Well, it's like you're in this maze, right? And there's no way out.
Oh, okay.
You just keep going, trying to find the perfect solution, but it's always just out of reach.
Oh, I see.
When we're talking about AI, it's this idea that as these tools get better, right, they might actually make us think that perfect is even better than it used to be.
Oh, that's interesting.
We could end up chasing an ideal that's not even possible and might even hurt our own creative process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like AI is making us look at our own perfectionism, maybe even making it worse. And the blog post says, I'll try to say this right, AI jamais conseguirá substituir o emular escritor o poeta. So it's saying AI can't really replace a writer or a poet because they have their own unique style.
Mm-hmm.
But with AI being everywhere in creative stuff, how do we deal with that?
Yeah,
Is it a good thing or a bad thing for someone who's a perfectionist?
that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it can be both, good and bad. On one hand, AI could be a perfectionist's best friend.
Yeah, how so?
Think about it. You could use AI to really dig into your writing, see where you can improve, even get different ideas for phrasing or structure.
Mhm.
It can make editing so much faster and maybe even lead to a much better final product.
I can definitely see that. But I'm also wondering if using these tools too much could make us less creative.
Yeah.
Would we get so focused on getting this perfect AI-approved piece of work that we lose our own voice, our own style?
Yeah. That's a valid point for sure. And it's something we have to be careful about. Think about AI-generated art.
Yeah.
It's amazing technology. It can make these really realistic images, but some people say it's missing something, like a soul, a human touch. That's what makes art really captivating.
Yeah, I get that. It's like those imperfections, the little quirks, the things that aren't quite right. Those are what make art interesting.
Exactly. And that's what makes us humans so important. Even with the best AI, there's still this thing that comes from human experience. Our emotions, our flaws, our unique perspectives.
So how do we find that balance then? How do we use AI without losing ourselves in it?
Right.
The blog post does a really good job of explaining the good and the bad sides of perfectionism.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got anxiety, procrastination, and trouble accepting mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the dedication, the high quality work, being really organized, all that good stuff that often comes with it. From your point of view, how do these traits work in the age of AI?
I think it comes down to being aware. aware of our own tendencies, the good and the bad, and how AI might make them stronger or weaker. For example, that habit of overanalyzing and revising, that might get even worse if you have tools that can spot every little mistake.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's important to set limits and know when something's actually good enough.
That's a good point. It's about finding that middle ground,
Yeah.
right? Using those good parts of perfectionism, like paying attention to detail and trying to do your best, but not getting stuck in that loop of endless revisions and being too hard on yourself.
Absolutely. And I think that's where being human really matters.
Hmm.
Being able to step back, look at the feedback AI is giving you, and then decide what to use and what to leave behind.
Right, right. Make your own choices.
Exactly. It's about staying in control, making those choices as a creator, even when you're working with these incredible tools.
Yeah.
It's like AI is giving us a whole new way to look at our work and how we create. It's exciting and a little scary at the same time, wouldn't you say?
I totally agree. And speaking of like different perspectives,
Mhm.
the blog post highlights this quote by Marcus Aurelius that I think is so perfect for this. It says, a busca obcecada pela excelencia no puede estar atrelada a busca por resultados perfectos. So basically it's saying that when we try to be excellent, we shouldn't expect perfect results. Especially with creative work, the journey is just as important as the destination you know.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And it makes me think about how, like, with social media and all the instant feedback we get these days, we're always seeing this, like, perfectly curated version of everything.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in that and forget that imperfections are valuable too. There's beauty in things that are raw and unfinished, things that are authentically human.
It's like we've forgotten that making mistakes is like a normal part of life and actually help us learn and come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
So how do you see this quote from Marcus Aurelius applying to how we use AI?
I think it's telling us to be okay with imperfection. Even though AI gives us all these tools to make things seem perfect, it's recognizing that AI can help us improve our work, but it shouldn't control our creative vision or like what we think is excellent.
So it's not about like rejecting AI completely.
Right.
It's about using it to make our work better without losing ourselves in the process.
Exactly. We need to find that balance where we're using AI to help us, but not letting it take over. We still need to be the ones making decisions as creators, even when we're working with these amazing tools.
That makes me think of another quote the blog post mentions. This one's from Michelangelo. He said, "Perfeição não é ambientale. São os detalhes que fazem a perfeição." At first, it seems like it's saying the opposite of embracing imperfection. What do you think about this quote?
I see it as saying that true perfection isn't about some big, flawless ideal. It's about putting your heart and soul into every little detail of what you're creating. It's appreciating those individual parts, even if the whole thing doesn't fit some idea of perfection.
So it's not about trying to make something absolutely perfect, but finding joy in the process,
Yeah.
and carefully creating each part of it. I love that.
Yeah, and that perspective is really important with AI because as these tools get better and can make things that seem perfect, it's easy to get caught up in trying to be technically perfect.
Mm.
But what Michelangelo is saying reminds us that real art comes from that human touch. Those little details that show our unique vision and how we express ourselves.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? Appreciating the precision and how efficient AI can be in our creative work, while also valuing those imperfections, the little quirks, the unexpected things that happen that make our work truly our own.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the main question we've been talking about. In this time of AI, where it's getting harder to tell the difference between something made by a human and something made by a machine, what does it even mean to aim for perfection?
It's a tough question, and I think we'll keep struggling with it as AI becomes more and more a part of our lives and our work. But I really believe that by having these conversations and looking at things from different angles, we can start to understand what it means to be human and to be creative in this world where technology is changing so fast.
Absolutely. And we have to remember this isn't a game where someone wins and someone loses.
Hmm.
AI isn't here to replace us being creative. It's here to give us new possibilities, new ways to express ourselves. We get to decide how we want to use these tools and what we think excellence looks like in this new era.
So to wrap up this deep dive into perfectionism and AI, what are some important things you'd want our listener to think about?
Well, first of all, remember wanting to be perfect is a natural human thing. It's what pushes us to create, to come up with new ideas, to try things that haven't been done before. But it's also important to understand that perfection is something you can never really reach. And if you spend all your time chasing it, you might just end up frustrated and doubting yourself.
Yeah, and that's where AI can help and also where it can be tricky. AI can be this amazing tool to make our work better and achieve a level of polish that we might not have been able to before. But we have to use these tools carefully. We can't let them tell us what to create or what's considered excellent.
Right. Remember what Marcus Aurelius said. Trying to be excellent shouldn't mean expecting perfect results. Don't be afraid of the imperfections that make your work yours. And find joy in the journey itself, in carefully making each part of what you're creating. And like Michelangelo said, true perfection isn't about making something totally flawless. It's about the dedication and passion you put into every little detail.
That's a great way to put it. And with that, we've come to the end of our deep dive. We hope this exploration has given you some new things to think about and maybe even changed your mind about what perfectionism and AI really mean.
It's been a great conversation, and we encourage you to keep thinking about these ideas and to find your own way as a creator in this amazing world that's always changing.
It really does feel like we're at this exciting crossroads.
Yeah.
AI is making us rethink what it means to create, what it means to strive for excellence.
And it goes way beyond just creative stuff. Think about all the other areas where perfectionism shows up in our work, our relationships, even how we see ourselves. How's AI changing those parts of our lives?
That's so true. It's easy to get caught up in trying to look perfect online, especially with AI tools that can retouch photos, make videos look better, and even create whole fake personalities. It's almost like we're making these perfect versions of ourselves and then feeling like we have to live up to them in real life.
It's a tough situation, and I think as a society, we're just starting to understand how to deal with it. How do we live in a world where it's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between what's real and what's fake?
It's almost like we're all in this big Kafkaesque dilemma,
Yeah.
always trying to reach an ideal that might not even exist, and in the process, forgetting about what really matters.
And that's why those insights from Marcus Aurelius and Michelangelo are so important. Aim for excellence, yes, but don't get lost in chasing something perfect that you can never really have. Embrace those imperfections, the little quirks, the things that make you unique.
And remember, what's important is the journey, not just the end result. Find joy in creating and learning and growing.
Yeah.
That's where the real magic happens.
I love that. And as we finish up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. In this age of AI where trying to be perfect is getting more and more complicated, maybe the most radical thing we can do is just embrace being human, to be okay with our flaws, to celebrate what makes us different, and to create from a place of authenticity and joy.
That's a perfect way to end this. Thank you so much for being with us on this deep dive into perfectionism and AI. It's been a really interesting conversation, and we hope it's given you some things to think about as you go on your own creative journey.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep diving deep.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're at this crossroads, right? AI is really making us rethink what it means to create, to aim for excellence.
And it's not just about creative stuff either, right? Think about all the other areas where perfectionism pops up. Our work, our relationships, even our own self-image. How is AI changing all of that?
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in wanting to look perfect online, especially now with all these AI tools. They can retouch your photos and make videos look amazing and even create these whole fake personas. It's almost like we're making these perfect versions of ourselves and then feeling pressure to be that perfect in real life.
It's a tough situation, and I think we're just starting to figure out how to handle it as a society. How do we live in a world where it's getting harder and harder to tell what's real and what's fake?
It's like we're all stuck in this Kafkaesque dilemma, always trying to reach this ideal that might not even exist and forgetting what actually matters.
Yeah. Right, and that's why those ideas from Marcus Aurelius and Michelangelo are so important. Aim for excellence, yes, but don't get lost in trying to be perfect. Embrace those little imperfections, the quirks, the things that make you unique.
Yeah, love that.
And remember, the journey is just as important as the destination. Find joy in the process of creating, of learning, of growing. That's where the real magic is.
Absolutely.
And as we wrap this up, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. In this age of AI where being perfect is getting more and more complicated, maybe the most radical thing we can do is to just be human, to accept our flaws, to celebrate what makes us different and to create from a place of realness and joy.
That's a perfect way to end this. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into perfectionism and AI. It's been a really great conversation.
It has.
And we hope it's given you some things to think about as you go on your own creative journey.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep diving deep.